The night they cast her out, it was raining so hard that the torches along the pack wall hissed and sputtered like dying breath. Aravos stood at the center of the courtyard, soaked to the bone, while the Ashford Pack Council looked down at her from the stone steps of the great hall. She did not cry. She could not speak to defend herself, but even if she could, she doubted anyone would have listened. "You carry a child with no father," said Councilman Rurik, his voice cold and final. "No wolf claims you. No wolf has come forward. You have shamed the memory of our king." Ilara pressed a hand over her stomach. She wanted to scream that they were wrong, that there was a father, that he was the king himself, but the scars on her throat made speech impossible. She had been mute since she was 9 years old, when a rogue attack tore through her village and left her voice buried somewhere she could never reach again. She could only write, and write she did, but the note she held out that night, the one that might have saved her, was snatched from her hands by Rurik and burned in the nearest torch before she could stop him. "Take her to the border," he ordered. "Let the forest decide her fate, not us." 2 guards seized her arms. She did not fight. Fighting had never worked for her before, not when she was 9, and not now. She simply lifted her chin and let them lead her away from the only home she had ever known, past the whispering crowd of pack members who once called her gentle, who once smiled at her in the healing halls, who now looked away as if her very shadow might curse them. Only one person did not look away. Cale Ashwood, a former royal guard, stood near the back of the crowd with his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He had served under King Draven for 6 years. He had seen things the council never had, quiet moments in the king's private study, a softness in the king's eyes whenever Ilara entered the room to bring him tea or change the bandages on his old battle wounds. Cale had never spoken of it to anyone, because it was not his secret to tell. But now, watching her disappear into the storm, alone and unable to defend herself, he felt something break inside his chest. He did not go after her that night. It would have been too dangerous, too obvious. But he made a silent vow beneath the rain-soaked sky. He would not let her die out there, not while there was truth left untold. The forest beyond Ashford's border was a place spoken of only in warnings. Wolves who wandered too far did not always return, but Ilara had no choice. She built a small shelter from fallen branches and old bark, the same way the healers had once taught her to build splints for broken bones. She was good with her hands. She had always been good with her hands, because her voice had been taken from her, and her hands had to speak for her instead. The days grew harder as her belly grew larger. She hunted small game with snares she remembered from childhood. She drank from a cold stream near her shelter, and boiled her water over a fire she was too afraid to let burn too bright, in case something worse than hunger came looking for her. It was on the 9th night that she heard footsteps outside her shelter, careful and quiet, not the clumsy stomp of a predator, but the deliberate step of someone who did not want to frighten her. She grabbed the sharpened stick she kept by her side and held her breath. "Ilara," Cale's voice was low. "It's me. I'm not here to hurt you." She lowered the stick slowly when his face appeared in the moonlight. She had seen him many times in the halls of Ashford, always a silent, steady presence beside the king. She had never spoken to him, of course, but she remembered the way he used to nod at her respectfully, the only guard who ever did. He held out a bundle of supplies, dried meat, warm blankets, a small jar of salve for the cold nights. She stared at it, then at him, her eyes asking the question her mouth could not. "I know," he said quietly, sitting a careful distance away. "I know the child is the king's. I saw the way he looked at you. I saw the mark on your collarbone the night he came back wounded from the eastern border, when you stayed up all night stitching him back together. I should have said something the day they banished you. I was a coward. I'm sorry." For the first time in 9 days, tears slipped down Ilara's face. She reached for the small notebook tied to her waist, the one thing she had managed to keep, and wrote with trembling hands. "They wouldn't have believed you." They didn't believe him either, near the end. Cale read the words twice before understanding fully struck him. "What do you mean, near the end?" She wrote slowly, remembering. The king knew the council was turning against outsiders and impurity in the bloodline. He feared what they would do if they learned our bond before we were ready to reveal it. He wanted to protect me. He wanted to protect our child, That is why we told no one. He said he would announce it when the time was right. And then he died, Kale said softly. Ilara nodded, her hand pressed to her heart. She wrote one more line before closing the notebook, unable to write further. I never got to say goodbye. Kale stayed with her that night, and many nights after. He did not ask her to return to Ashford, not yet. He knew the council would not welcome her back on words alone, not when they had already made their judgment so public, so final. He needed proof, real proof, something even Rurik and his allies could not deny. He remembered something the pack elders used to speak of in old stories, a mark passed down through royal bloodlines, visible only in true moonlight, appearing on the true mate of an alpha king. He had seen a faint shimmer once on Ilara's collarbone the night Draven returned wounded, though he had said nothing of it at the time, believing it was simply a trick of firelight. Ilara, he said one evening as the moon rose full and bright above the trees, may I see your collarbone? Just for a moment. I think I know how to prove the truth. She hesitated only a moment, before nodding and pulling her collar aside. Beneath the pale light of the full moon, a faint silver mark bloomed against her skin, shaped like a small crescent wrapped in flame, the ancient royal seal of the Ashford bloodline. Kale's breath caught in his throat. This is it, he whispered. This is proof no one can burn or deny. Back within Ashford's walls, the pack was beginning to suffer in ways the council could not explain. The ancient magic that bound the territory together, tied since its founding to the bloodline of true Alpha Kings, had grown thin and unstable since Draven's death. Crops that once grew strong along the borderlands were wilting. Young wolves were struggling to complete their first shifts. Whispers spread among the older pack members that perhaps the king's line was not as extinct as the council believed, and that the land itself was crying out for a true heir to return. Rurik dismissed these whispers publicly, but privately he grew anxious. He had orchestrated much of Ilara's banishment himself, though few knew the depth of his involvement. He was Draven's cousin, and with no heir to claim the throne, he stood closest in line to become the next Alpha King. He could not afford for anyone to learn the truth about Ilara's child. If word spread, and the mark was ever seen, his claim to power would crumble instantly. So when a scout reported rumors of a former guard traveling toward the border with supplies, and of a silver mark glimpsed in the moonlight near an old hunter's trail, Rurik did not hesitate. He sent trackers, quiet and loyal only to him, with orders that made his intentions clear, without ever needing to be spoken aloud. Kale sensed the danger before it arrived. He had spent enough years as a guard to recognize the signs: broken branches that shouldn't be broken, birds that startled too easily, a stillness in the forest that did not belong. He gathered Ilara and what little they had, and began moving toward a hidden path that led toward the old healer's cottage near the northern hills, a place run by Marin, an elder healer who had once served the king's own mother, and who Kale trusted above almost anyone left in Ashford. They never made it fully undetected. The attack came just as Ilara's pains began, sudden and sharp, stealing the breath from her lungs, as her body signaled that the child could wait no longer. Kale fought off the first two trackers alone, his training as a royal guard proving stronger than Rurik's hired men had expected. Marin arrived just in time, alerted by a runner Kale had sent ahead days earlier as a precaution, and helped guide Ilara into the safety of the cottage while Kale held the line at the door. Inside, Ilara labored in silence, unable to cry out, even as pain racked her body, her only sounds the soft, broken breaths escaping through gritted teeth. Marin held her hand and spoke gently, guiding her through each wave with the calm experience of decades spent bringing new life into the world. Outside, the fight grew fiercer. Kale was joined unexpectedly by two other guards who had once served under Draven, and who, upon hearing rumors of the Silent Omega's innocence, had chosen to follow Kale's trail rather than obey Rurik's quiet, unspoken commands. Together, they held off the remaining trackers until the attackers, outnumbered and unwilling to die for a cause built on lies, retreated into the trees. Inside the cottage, a thin, high cry finally broke the silence. Not from Ilara, but from the tiny child now resting against her chest. Marin gasped softly as she looked down at the newborn's eyes, which glowed faintly with a warm golden light even in the dim cottage, the unmistakable mark of a true alpha bloodline. He carries the king's mark, Marin whispered in awe. There is no denying this child. When Kale entered moments later, exhausted and bleeding from a shallow wound along his arm, he stopped in the doorway at the sight of Alara cradling her son, both of them alive, both of them safe. He knelt beside her, and for the first time since the night of her banishment, Alara smiled, not the careful, guarded smile she had learned to wear around others, but something soft and real, and full of quiet relief. News of the golden-eyed child spread through Ashford within days, carried first by whispers, and then by the two guards who returned to speak the truth openly before the council, no longer afraid of what Rurik might do to silence them. Marin herself testified to what she had witnessed, and confirmed what she had long suspected about the bond between Alara and the late king. The ancient mark on Alara's collarbone, once dismissed as impossible or invented, was seen by enough witnesses under the full moon that denial became impossible. Rurik's authority crumbled swiftly once his role in the banishment came fully to light. Faced with undeniable proof and a pack no longer willing to look away, the council had no choice but to reverse their judgment. Aravos, once cast out as a disgraced Omega, returned to Ashford not through the servants' gate, but through the front doors of the great hall, her son held safely in her arms, Kale walking steadily by her side. She still could not speak. She never would again, not with her voice, but she no longer needed to. The mark on her son's eyes spoke every truth that mattered, and the notebook she still carried, now filled with page after page of memories and grief and quiet love, told the rest of her story to anyone who cared to read it. The pack that once turned its back on her slowly learned to see her differently, not as a woman disgraced by silence, but as a woman who had protected her king's final gift to the world through unimaginable hardship, asking for nothing in return but the chance to keep her child safe. Kale remained close, not out of duty this time, but by choice. He never pushed her, never rushed her, understanding that trust rebuilt slowly held stronger than trust given freely. In time, without needing words at all, Alara reached for his hand one quiet evening as they watched her son sleep, and Kale understood the message as clearly as if she had spoken it aloud. The pack thrived once more as the ancient magic settled and strengthened around its true heir, and the story of the silent Omega, who had been wrongly banished, became not a tale of shame, but one told with pride. A reminder that judgment made too quickly could bury a truth worth protecting, and that some of the strongest voices are the ones that never need to make a sound at all.